amazing news. In fact, this story by Michael Schneider of the American Dream blog, and it breaks down the numbers. Election fraud. Obama won more than 99% of the vote in more than 100 Ohio precincts. And we see similar numbers like this all over. It's not that I'm even saying Romney's a good guy. People say, well, we heard the calls Friday. People said, are you a racist? And I said, no. And they said, but you don't like Obama. And the public is dumbed down to that level. Or not even dumbed down. It's like childlike minds. It's kind of like Native Americans selling Manhattan for a box of glass beads. Well, they didn't even have a concept of selling something or of a deed. So, I mean, it's the same thing. How do you communicate with people who cannot grasp even low-level concepts? Very, very simple concepts. How do you deal with a population in a zombie-like state, who wants to be in a zombie-like state, who wants to be in a lethargic state, who wants to not know what's going on around them, and who just wants to shuffle through life like they never even existed? Thank God I'm not one of those people. That's all I can say. Thank my Heavenly Father above that I was given some spark of energy and humanity. But it's the additives in the food, it's the entertainment, it's the entire culture is just falling apart. But I will open the phones up again. I should have done this a long time ago. We open them up for everybody, but the Obama supporters, rarely are able to get through. But today we're going to open the phones up again in the first hour when we come back from break for Obama supporters to call in, and they're not being sarcastic and say you're a racist. And everybody can hear where this is going. Identity, politics, pure and simple. And people not able to grasp the fact that we know Romney was a globalist as well, that Obama was funded by the same people as Romney. Either way, they would win. But that the system was rigged so that Obama could come in because they think he can push their agenda better and get people to cheerlead war as peace. We're seeing 1984 come true, so they will cheer selling out their birthright and their future for literal subsistence-level government payouts. So this is the type of information that we are going to be breaking down here today. Paul Watson also is going to be popping in the last 30 minutes of the broadcast to talk about incredible new TSA developments. But here's Paul Watson's latest article at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com. Drivers questioned on guns at federal checkpoint. And this is all part of the conditioning. When they roll something new out like this, it's all done to sound reasonable to set the precedent, and then Katie bar the door. Hey, we're just going to have some federal screeners checking bags for bombs after 9/11. That sounds reasonable. We're just going to have you take your shoes off and your belt off. We're just going to take you over here and question you. We're just going to ask you some questions. We're just going to touch your body. We're just going to touch you on the outside of your pants. We're just going to put you in this body scanner. We're just going to put our hands inside your pants. We're just going to take you to this private room. We're just going to set up checkpoints on the highways and have TSA there and search you along with federal troops. This is how they do it. Also, you got people in New Jersey and New York living in FEMA camps, 12 days without power, huddling in the cold, freezing, and prison-like control. The media is not allowed in. You've got men with machine guns there. You can see the model of the collapsing United States. And we've got the big General Petraeus resignation and all of that coming up. Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones.
While we fight to retain our liberty, while we fight to expose globalism, we have to realize we're talking about a very powerful combination of power.
Renowned author and expert Joel Skousen breaks down the globalist plan to shut down America and stage a new world war.
In one day, America will go from day to night. And if you haven't prepared in advance, there's not enough time to prepare in 24 hours, even if you saw it that early.
Coming to the InfoWar in November is our new documentary film presentation.
Strategic relocation is a systematic way to think strategically in the future about how do I safeguard.
Joel Skousen, Strategic Relocation.
The freeways are going to be crowded. They're going to run out of gasoline. They're going to run out of food. And then they're going to start to go north and south of those freeways.
Joel Skousen is renowned as one of the world's foremost experts in strategic relocation and the securing of your home.
We talk about natural disasters, the health environment. We talk about pollution, the water quality. My personal experience about being in every one of these states.
Government is digging in for the organized, incremental collapse of society and world war.
The U.S. isn't building huge underground bases and bunkers because of some terrorist threat. They know that a massive nuclear attack is coming. They want that attack to come. Most people won't even be ready and won't be able to get out of town when any of these nuclear weapons fall, because there'll be absolute panic.
There is no preparedness without strategy.
What I tell people is that you do have time. Prepare wisely in advance.
This Christmas, give the gift of preparedness. Strategic Relocation, the film, with Joel Skousen and Alex Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Alex Jones, and we are engaged here in a desperate attempt to shake humanity out of its deepening coma. We are engaged here today on this Monday, 12th of November, 2012 transmission, trying to set brush fires in the minds of men and women everywhere. And we've got an incredibly important broadcast today lined up for you on so many fronts, but I want to just give listeners the good news here, because most of you are not prominent or are not public figures. You really don't have a very good way to gauge how big the awakening is, but I can go anywhere in the world, Europe, Latin America, you name it, and walk down the street and have every 10th person stop and shake my hand. And this weekend, I took my wife and children to the Texas Renaissance Festival that I hadn't been to since I was a child. It was a lot of fun because it wasn't a big establishment Disney World thing with checkpoints, and there wasn't any TSA, and there were thousands of people walking around with real swords and daggers everywhere, and the cops were nice. And then we also went down to Houston yesterday and went to the aquarium down there. And I shot some footage of all this. We'll be premiering on the nightly news and the radio show this week as well. But the point is, I got mobbed if I started talking. People really recognize my voice. And I'd start talking to one person, and then another person would hear me talk. And then pretty soon I'd have 5 or 6 people forming around me, and I'd say bye-bye and, you know, get out of there and walk. Because if I kept talking, it would end up being a crowd gathering around me. Every shop I went in, every shop, whether it was a coffee shop or a place where I bought some replica tomahawks, it didn't matter. And here were all these small vendors, small manufacturers. I mean, it was really a free market situation with the great jugglers and people jousting and a guy that was lighting his whips on fire and doing these night shows and fireworks. I mean, it was Americana, and I had a great time. But the good news here is that every time I go out in public now, more and more and more people come up to me. And again, I could be sitting there at a table outside under the trees in the dark, because we stayed until nighttime, talking, and people would just be walking by and stopping. And I mean, a lot of people came up to me. And so there's a gauge of how many people are starting to wake up. Just to give you an idea, that's just a snapshot. And it's, again, not Alex Jones up here, yours truly, if you're just tuning in for the first time saying, ooh, aren't I a big shot? No, no, no. It's kind of creepy in a way to know the globalists are fully aware of what I'm doing. And I was driving through Houston on our way out yesterday, and Richard Reeves was with us. And I looked over, and Richard said, look at that. It's the George Herbert Walker Bush Memorial, or monument is what they call it. And I pulled over there and shot some video of that and filed a report that's up at Infowars.com. Headline, Alex Jones visits a temple of evil. And people say, well, why are you calling it a temple? Well, it's set up with temple guardians. It's set up in a Romanesque temple god format. For those that don't understand, who are profane, as the New World Order crowd would call you, this is a guy into the occult. This is a Skull and Bones, Illuminati Chapter 322 guy. But I was just creeped out to sit there and look at this big 12-foot bronze statue and realize that a lot of people think that guy's a good guy and is going to save them. Just like a lot of people think Obama is a good guy and is going to save them when they're just globalist frontmen. And that there were some Republicans there, 4 or 5 people, and a couple of them knew who I was, but the others were thinking I was a bad person for talking bad about George W. Bush or George Herbert Walker Bush. I must have been an evil Democrat. Just like when Democrats tune in and I'm criticizing Obama, they automatically think I must be a mainline Republican. And it just shows the incredible shallowness of people. And that's been learned. That's been hammered into them. So before I get into the off-the-chart economic news, election fraud news now completely emerging, before I get into a FEMA camp that's a nightmare situation, Camp Sandy, before I get into the latest on Petraeus and the calls for him to testify and that whole resignation, if you really believe it's over that female honeypot they set him up with, I got a bridge I'm ready to sell you. Before I get into federal checkpoints on highways asking about your firearms, before I get to all of that today, I wanted to give the number out again, and I know a lot of people are upset by this. We're getting hundreds of calls at the office, literally. Emails, text messages, stuff pouring in, comments on Infowars.com and PrisonWanted.com saying, let us on. Let us respond to the Obamanoids. Obama, he give me phone. He gonna do more. Obama. I don't want people calling in claiming they're an Obama supporter and being sarcastic. We clearly had some of those yesterday, or not yesterday, last Friday. Last live show I did. Had a great rebroadcast with some premiere special reports yesterday on the Sunday show, 4 to 6 Central. And you will get your chance to be on as constitutionalists, libertarians, or people that agree or disagree, whatever your political ilk, when we just have open phones. But I think it's more important a few days a week to give collectivists and to give Obama supporters, because even after Aaron Dykes took over Friday in the third hour to air some special reports, he took some calls, and I would have to run back in as he took the calls. People were going, I just want to know, is Alex Jones a racist? I think he's probably a racist. And so the whole world now is about, if you don't like big government, if you don't like government health care, if you don't like turning your guns in, if you don't like the CPS taking people's kids without due process, if you know their pedophile ring run, if you don't like the pedophile training that the TSA is doing, the slave training, if you realize we're going into classical tyranny, you see what Chris Matthews says, oh, you don't like big government? You must be a racist. Oh, you're against gun control? I had the Austin American Statesman call me once and say, it was back in 1998, it's a famous video online, or 99, when we caught bribery going on down at the Texas Capitol. And they called me and they said, are you racist? And I said, let me call you back at your number at the Statesman. I said, I don't believe this is really a Statesman person calling my home. And he said, I assure you, Mr. Jones, I am. And he wasn't a black guy. It had been black guys I caught being paid off. The Texas Ethics Commission did say it was illegal what went on. It was actually the liberals marching black guys up to say, look, we're scary black guys. You know, we used to be gangbangers. You want to ban guns, basically, or we'll get guns. And they were using them to sell a stereotype to restrict the Second Amendment. That's how they got the first gun laws in this country passed at the end of the Civil War, when blacks were gaining their freedom. Or at least a higher level of it. I need a new earpiece during the break. I'm just going to give you guys a heads up so we don't go through a whole deal. This one's shattered. Keeps coming out my ear. Anyways, getting back to what I was saying. And so I called the Statesman back, the local paper, and then the guy said, okay, you ready to do the interview now? And he says, so are you a racist? And I went, well, no, I'm not. I caught these guys being paid off after their testimony. The Texas Ethics Commission of the legislature, the Ethics Committee's investigating. And the guy said, well, I just want to know if you're racist. Would you have put these guys on TV if they would have been white? And I said, well, of course I would have. I would have put anybody on television with this happening. I put it on my local cable show here in Austin at the time. And they still went with that in the newspaper, changing the subject, because it's not that they're actually trying to stop racism. That's their stock and trade. That's what they deal in. And that wasn't, again, a black guy that was calling me. It was a Hispanic reporter. Again, I forget the exact headline of the article or the guy's full name, but I remember it was the cover of the Metro and State, about payments at Capitol start investigation, I think was the headline. But then the article itself kicked off with saying, we asked Alex Jones if he would have put these guys in there if they would have been white. And they do that to just get you off balance. But with the dumbed down masses, it really works. I mean, you've heard the callers. I had a guy calling in, a white guy promoting socialism. I know that because the guy's called many times and talks about how he's a white guy and a socialist and everything else. And I said, look, I don't believe socialism really works. It destroys societies. And he said, oh, that's a nice John Birch Society point. And it's not that saying I'm John Birch Society hurts me. It's that that's what Chris Matthews says. It's like they only say 4 or 5 things. Conspiracy theorist, racist, old white guys. I saw the cover of the Time magazine, or is it Newsweek that's coming out, where it shows Obama conquering, and it says the end of white guys. And that's the talking point. Hey, we're going to take your future. We're going to take your jobs. We're going to put you on welfare. But women and, quote, minorities, who are the majority together, it's your time now. The government, you're teamed up with the government. We're going to get the white guys. And then that makes white guys automatically go into a gang mentality against all the other groups. And so the system knows exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're engaging in, and it's basically the same way you control a prison. They've known for a long time you put different ethnic groups in a prison, put them in their own areas, and they'll fight with each other instead of the jail guards. And then you'll have a leader over the white supremacists, the black groups, the Hispanic groups. And then that also forms the new culture once they hit the streets. So it's institutional tribalism, divide and conquer is what it really is. The system calls it racism.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
If you go to the Newsweek cover, it's a David Frum article, a guy that attacks me routinely. It says, GOP, you're old, you're white, your history, the Obama conquest. And it shows him as Napoleon conquering the United States with a sword. He comes with a sword, that's right. And as soon as they can get our guns, folks, their dream is to dominate us. Their dream is to take over our lives. Their dream is to destroy the family and everybody in this country and reduce us down to absolute slaves. Can you imagine if Romney would have won and there would have been a headline about you're black, you're brown, your history? And again, it's not that they're actually going to have all the, quote, minorities that are really the majority come get anybody. If you looked at a G20 or Bilderberg or globalist meeting, it's all about 99% old white people. It's that this is how you divide and conquer. And whites are told, you're bad, you're scum, any culture you've got, get rid of it. I mean, that's openly taught in all the universities. That's on record. Everybody else is taught you're inherently bad if you're white. And whites go, well, I'm inherently bad. And it's meant to get rid of everybody's culture, though, and just integrate everything into a giant plastic, artificial culture. So I want to hear from the Obama people. I mean, I was wondering why Thursday and Friday I was getting these calls going, you're a racist, and people laughing, saying the age of the white man is over. Really, I thought it was, white people, Christians, who started the abolitionist movement. I mean, there's good white people, there's bad white people, there's good black people, there's bad black people. I thought it was all about the character of our deeds. I thought feminism was going to empower women, but now they're sexual objects and totally broken down and atomized and statistically more unhappy than they've ever been, and their kids have been taken over by the state. You see, what was done in the black community now is going to be done in every community. And so that's why the black community is held up as the ultimate goal, the ultimate in everything stylish and good. Because it's not a black culture. It's a New World Order gangster pirate culture meant to destroy us. And it's working quite nicely. You go look at kids in small towns or big cities who, black, white, Hispanic, you name it. They're following this gangster culture. And the degeneration is going quite nicely. And then those of us, whether we be black, white, Hispanic, Asian, who love God, who love justice, we're the bad guys. In the Homeland Security reports, it's the returning veterans, the gun owners, the libertarians, the constitutionalists, the anti-New World Order people. It actually says that in the federal manuals. You can pull them up. We're the ones that know the score. It's like Friday. I'm saying we've got to stop these mega banks from taking over. We've got to come together, and we've got to realize we've been conquered by foreign and offshore banks. And you've got the Republicans, you've got the Democrats, you've got Jack Hunter at Campaign for Liberty writing articles saying no more conspiracy, no more about mega banks taking us over, no more about CFR or Trilateral Commission or New World Order. But I mean, now it's here. They're announcing the New World Order. Oh, but I'm even worse now for being right. I mean, how could I be worse? I'm talking about the New World Order, the foreign banks that brag they've conquered us. I'm showing news articles where they brag about it. But that's in the financial papers. So all the business people know, hey, you've been conquered. You're not supposed to tell the general public that. They're not supposed to be told they've been conquered. They're still being told, give your rights up or Al-Qaeda will get you. Meanwhile, the government publicly runs Al-Qaeda in Libya and Syria. And Ron Paul talked about that on Friday with us. So the good news is you're not going to stop this message from getting out. The bad news is the public, a large portion of it is so dumbed down, they would do anything they're told by the government. If they told them, run and jump off that cliff or you're racist, there's a lot of people that would run and jump off the cliff. And it's just totally dumbed down to the level of beyond mindless. And we're going to open the phones up for you, the Obama supporter. 800-259-9231. It's 1-800-259-9231, just for Obama supporters. Very important that everybody be able to hear these folks. And again, I could show everybody the lovely cover of Newsweek, where it says, hey, if you're white, you're history. There you go. Obama's conquest, racial identity. It was 50 million on food stamps. Now they say that's exploding. This is the conquest, the domestication of America and the divide and conquer. See, multiculturalism was never about ending old crimes and old divisions. It was about bringing in super divisions. 800-259-9231. And we'll also get into drivers questioned on guns at federal checkpoints inside the United States. Their cars are searched without warrants. We're going to get into what's really happening behind the Petraeus situation. Could this be Obama's Watergate?
As we saw in Katrina, and as we are watching now in New York and New Jersey, the federal government can't and won't help you in a crisis. FEMA ran out of water and MREs in days. Electricity is still off to over 1 million people. The Red Cross, who is quick to beg for money, is now slow to react. Don't put it off any longer. Get prepared today. The InfoWars shop is the largest distributor of ProPur water filter systems. And now, get 15% off your ProPur order with the promo code WATER15. While you're on InfoWarsShop.com, check out these other great preparedness items. The Aquapod kit lets you store up to 65 gallons of water in your bathtub. The Pocket Socket provides you with manual electricity for small electronics like your cell phone. The Life Straw is great for your bug-out bag. And check out our complete line of Interfood products for great tasting and nutritionally dense foods that have a great shelf life. If you are looking to secure your home in a crisis, you can order Strategic Relocations, the film, a great companion to the book Strategic Relocations 3rd edition, and The Secure Home by Joel Skousen. When the time to perform arrives, the time to prepare has already passed. Get prepared now, so if a crisis strikes your home, you and your family will be secure. Go to InfoWarsShop.com and don't forget the promo code WATER15.
Obama conquest with a sword. And, yeah, they want our guns, ladies and gentlemen. That's why when I say I want our Second Amendment, you've heard the callers call in and say that's because you're a scared white man. Well, I'm actually an empowered human being that understands that slaves are disarmed. And when black folks working with white folks demanded and fought for their liberty back in the 1860s and received it, at least in name, the first gun laws that were passed were so that black people couldn't own guns. So I guess they were racist because they wanted their guns. No, they wanted to be able to protect their families. It is such a secure feeling living in the countryside of Texas. And the fact that it sounds like World War III on the weekends. The crime rate maps for the state of Texas show the area I live in has some of the lowest crime, not in Texas, but in the United States. I live in the 1% of the safest areas of the country. I'm in the top 1% of the safest area, even though quarter mile from my house are people that live in nice little trailer houses, happy, hardworking folks. Poor people, working class people. But you know what? They're rich culturally. Whether they're black, white, or Hispanic, they've got their guns, they've got their vehicle, they've got their freedom, they breathe fresh air. And the globalists don't want that. They want us crammed into these compact prison-like cities. And they're invoking total race now, ladies and gentlemen. Invoking it to create divide and conquer. Toll-free number for Obama supporters to join us and tell us about their victory. And why I'm bad for not liking Obama doesn't mean I love Mitt Romney, but clearly Obama is more New World Order on the surface. Open borders, wants to restrict guns massively, shipping our jobs overseas, more corporate bailouts, warrantless wiretapping. Chris Hedges, big, real liberal. I admire him because he's a real guy, saying Obama twice as bad as Bush. So I don't want to hear about Bush all day long. Yeah, we get Bush was bad. The point is, will we accept anything because he's got some pigment in his skin? I mean, you know, I've been a show that hasn't really gotten much into race issues. I've tried to wake people up to it. But now it's on. And as the globalists get this country more and more and more, as whites become the minority, which is going to happen in about 6-7 years, and then it's going to accelerate. It's open season. I mean, whites get beat up and attacked all over the country. You see it in local news. And the media comes out later and says, well, we can't report because it would be racist to report on whites being racially attacked. And, man, I tell you, if the globalists ever get the general population's guns, black, white, you name it, it is just going to be a disaster. They really want our guns. But listen, here's the issue. They're not going to get them because of just sheer force of awareness. People are buying millions and millions of guns, on average about 3 million a month. It's been as high as 5 million in a month this year. And it's only accelerating, and it's breaking the back of the globalist. And I want to mention this article, play some clips from it, then I'll get into your calls, then I'll cover Petraeus and this huge scandal and what's really behind that from my research. People living like animals in the FEMA camp in New York and New Jersey. We're living like animals. Daily Mail, Sandy victims hit out after being forced to spend 12 days without power, freezing. FEMA offices closed with the signs saying because of bad weather. Gotta love that. Now FEMA's kicked out any reporters because, so now the people are held in the camp. On the news is black helicopters. That's one of the headlines. FEMA's Camp Freedom, concentration camp with Black Hawk helicopters flying above. Poor people that didn't think it was good to prep. Camp FEMA update. We feel like we're in a concentration camp. That's a mainline headline. Unbelievable. Sick, frail struggle most in storm's aftermath. Tragic find on Staten Island. People dead in their homes. Frozen to death. You name it. Unbelievable. Who's holding it together? Churches and private citizens. But first, I want to get to this, and then I'm going to your phone calls, okay, before I get to just all of this other news. Right here, Lindsey Graham, we need Watergate-type committee to investigate Benghazi. Petraeus must testify. Yeah, how obvious is all this? Before we go any further, this is such a big article that Paul Joseph Watson did. Drivers questioned on guns at federal checkpoint. This is at Infowars.com, and this is at PrisonPlanet.com. Please get it out to everyone you know. Retweet it. It's up at Real Alex Jones on Twitter, twitter.com/Real Alex Jones. Please retweet this story to everybody you know and follow us there. Drivers questioned on guns at federal checkpoint. And the way this newscast, that I may even break this down on the nightly news tonight. I think we got Gerald Celente on the nightly news tonight. He's now filed suit against Google. We'll tell you why. He'll be on about that and other issues. Not someone to sue, not a litigious person. He's been forced to, so he'll be joining us. But I'm also going to break this video down tonight properly because there's so much propaganda. It might take 20 minutes to do it. I don't have the time here. But first they don't explain that last time I checked in Arizona, over 60% of the state is federal land. Another 10% or so is state. I know that only one other state is ahead of Arizona for having more federal land, and that's Nevada, which is over 86% last time I checked. And the government's grabbing and buying with taxpayer money more land and harassing people that have their farms and ranches inside the property, families that have been there pre-statehood or even territory. But the issue here is I sit here and watch a newscast like this, and my head starts spinning because there's so much data. But here's the bottom line. You remember the signs that went up 2 years ago, and Paul Watson's got links to that in the article, where they announced that upwards of 40% of Arizona was off limits. The feds put up signs in the south and even some areas of the north saying, do not enter this area. Law enforcement is standing down, like they've said in Detroit, do not come in this area. It's too dangerous because of the 5 million illegals a year that go back and forth there, because of the houses being burned down, the mass murder. The only thing holding it together is the Second Amendment. Now, what's happened is citizens have started going into these national parks and preserves, and because it's a constitutional state, the feds haven't been able to go in and shut things down. People used to go into national parks and deer hunt and hunt other game that were there. Now people just go to do target practice. And yeah, a lot of people leave shotgun shells, you name it, in these giant areas that are thousands of square miles. The illegals are dumping trash everywhere. The illegals are doing whatever they want. That's on record. But citizens now going to and from, and remember, you have to drive across these national parks if you look at the maps. So I'm going to do a report tonight on this, showing the maps on the nightly news. Most of the state drives over national parks, so you've got to drive through these passes that are fingers of federal land. So you're driving with your family, and you pull up to an armed checkpoint. And there is federal police out there with the most socialistic, pro-New World Order park rangers. I run into them everywhere. Some of them aren't bad people, but a lot of them are out of control. Well, that's where socialists go to get their jobs. It's one of their favorite places. It's TSA on steroids. And they say, oh, let me see what guns you got, even when you're not going into the park to go shooting. And again, this isn't like going to the Grand Canyon where there's tourists everywhere. These parks are thousands of square miles. I mean, there's smugglers, there's gunfights, there's everything. It's lawless. But remember Border Patrol 5 years ago, they ordered them to not arrest illegals, but to go pick up garbage on the highways? Remember that? Or the Border Patrol can sit at a checkpoint and look left or right, but not both directions. You know, they're told let the illegals go. The feds tell the cities they won't come pick the illegals up. Illegals can drunk drive. They're above the law because it's part of the globalist program to drive down the wages. And to give Mexico a steam valve of their criminals so that Mexico doesn't fall. They don't want revolution to happen there and Mexico get any freedom. They want to export the revolution here with revolution-hungry people, but it'll be a La Reconquista, La Invasora of the Southwest, not of Mexico proper. That means reconquer, retake over. Okay, so all of that's going on. Perfect globalist takeover plan, because a lot of folks don't speak Spanish to even know this is going on, but this is what's promoted on the radio stations. They're named La Invasora, La Reconquista, La Raza, means the race. Just like they're saying, if you're white, you're history on the cover of Newsweek. Well, it's the same thing in the Spanish media, and they pick on Hispanic kids that wear American flags. Right here in Austin, Texas, San Francisco, it's been in the news. They say, just type American flags, children sent home for American flags. You don't wear an Old Navy shirt. It's like you go, because it's a gang thing. They're like, you get out of here. Okay, you don't fly those colors here. The illegals pull down the American flags at post offices, private businesses. You've seen it in the news. So understand the backdrop of this is you've got Hispanic Americans, white Americans, black Americans in this newscast going out and shooting their guns at areas that are popular shooting ranges just out in the middle of the mountains. Well, here come people saying, well, you're all guilty now because somebody was at a checkpoint. You know, you just drove through the checkpoint. You're guilty now because somebody else left some shotgun shell casings instead of the park rangers going to the areas where people tend to congregate. Even though it's a giant area, people like to congregate in certain areas. You go there where our grandfathers shot, so we still retain that right because we've exercised it. And you've got these park rangers who obviously aren't fans of the Second Amendment. I'll bet my right arm. Sitting there saying, oh, it's so reasonable. Oh, it's so helpful. It's so nice. Well, everybody didn't seem to mind having them, you know, search their cars, and they're being reasonable. I tell you what, you go back and pick some brass up, and I won't give you a ticket. That's just for the news to make it look reasonable. And now they're setting up checkpoints all over the state with the feds searching your cars. Remember, over 60% of the state is national parks that cut across highways everywhere. And so the feds, wherever they have their reservations, their takeover beachheads, they now harass you. Not just 100 miles in from every coast and every border, but all over the country. The news reports are coming in at beaches on the East Coast in North Carolina, South Carolina. They're doing this. Inside the towns. They're doing it in the middle of the country around Colorado and national parks where you're driving along and they're like, we're here to check for your guns. Well, why? We want to make sure you're not leaving brass on the ground. No, it's a way to get you used, just like they admit gun buyback programs are to create the images of people lined up turning guns in. This is how they've done it in other countries. Now, here's the deal. If you're watching on prisonplanet.tv, if not, just type Reddington Pass, Arizona into your search engine, you'll notice that there's all these big towns and cities right around it. You got, how do you pronounce that? Tanquay, Verde, and all the, how do you pronounce it? Tanque Verde. You've got all these towns and cities, because I knew that. I'd driven through there. You've got to drive through the Green National Park, through the major highways. I mean, if you've been to Arizona, folks, you're constantly driving through national parks. And now, hey, guess what? Checkpoint. And they admit that if you pull up the local newspaper articles about it. And it's like most people didn't mind. It's like saying most people didn't mind having their, you know, their freedom taken. Most people didn't mind property taxes that are unconstitutional, turning your property into a rental. Most people didn't mind the school forcibly inoculating their kids outside of law. Most people didn't mind the school laptops watching their kids at home. That's what they report in California and Pennsylvania and other states where the laptops watch you at home. It's 1984, and they're like, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? We're just watching you with the laptop at home. I mean, the government's just watching you inside your house. It's just a federal checkpoint. It shows the federal guys out there, federal marshals out there armed, searching people. And now in Colorado, they just have armed checkpoints with cops in green uniforms with machine guns, aiming guns. It's been on the news. You can pull it up. People put their hands up and get out of their cars. They shut all highways down, and they just aim guns at you. I'm just going to aim this M16 at you, you and your family. How's that sound? Again, we're being brought into martial law incrementally. But they have all the idiots on the newscast going, I think it's reasonable. No one in the newscast says they don't think it's reasonable. You know that was done on purpose. I just don't like it. People are leaving gun brass out here, so I'm guilty. They're ruining it for the rest of us. See, instead of going out and busting people actually littering, which they could pull up and do, no. We're going to just say, turn around and go pick brass up 20 miles back because you got a gun and I don't see brass in here as you drive through into major cities. Again, you drive through little fingers of national parks at a mountain pass, and there's guys with machine guns out there because of the brass, while the illegals throw garbage everywhere. It's not about brass. Look at all those towns you got to drive through. Sabino Canyon, Sabino Springs, Holcomb Estates, Bear Canyon, Huffington, Harrison, South Harrison, Terra del Sol. Look at that big towns. Look at all those towns. And you can back out on that, back out of that from Terra del Sol for people. Tucson, Catalina Foothills, Oreo Valley. Look at that. Tucson, second biggest city. You want to drive through that pass? When circling around Tucson is that? I said I'd go to your calls. Oh, my gosh.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the sites, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.